Super Smash Bros. Ultimate is the game that made me not regret buying a Switch. Don't get me wrong, I love having a portable indie machine, but most of what I own, I have already played and beaten on computer, so I generally only wind up playing these games while traveling, and I don't travel as much as I used to. For those that don't know me well, that opening sentence is me swallowing more pride than Vegeta admitting Goku is stronger than him. Smash is a franchise that has been such a weird thorn in my side ever since its inception. This video is a bitter pill, but we all have to take them from time to time in our lives. Before I get into how I fell in love with Smash Bros. Again, I think a little bit of my background with the series as a whole is needed to contextualize how weighted that intro line is, and why I've felt this way throughout the last 20 years since the game first released on Nintendo 64. I never owned the original growing up as a kid. My circle of friends all sort of split responsibilities on which multiplayer party games we owned, and would bring to sleepover gaming sessions. Mine was Mario Kart 64, although I did try and sneak Lilac Wars in there a few times, but no one else really took to it. So for me, there is a sense of nostalgia tied to the original Smash Bros, but they're more of those nights hanging out with my friends and staying up way too late, turning the volume down on the TV and containing our hype as best we could when the clock ran a little too late past our bedtimes. By the time the second iteration, Melee, rolled around, I decided to take the leap for myself since I had just moved country and that core group of friends was no longer an option to play games with. But this is when I learnt, very quickly, that Super Smash Bros. Is not a game to be played alone. Or at least solo was not for me, I should say. But it was a rude awakening for a 15-year-old, and at that time in my life, I was at the age where I was ready to hate anything that did me wrong. And boy did I feel slighted for no real reason, other than the pains of moving country and puberty all coalescing and being projected onto this game. I worked many hours at an after-school job I hated to buy, and so for that, I have always kind of unfairly hated Melee. That chip on my shoulder has always stuck with me, and anyone that knows me can attest to how unreasonably stubborn I can be about my opinions, especially when they're negative. So when Nintendo's motion-controlled cultural phenomenon the Wii rolled around, and we got the next generation of Smash Bros. With Brawl, I was not ready to be hurt again. However, I was a bit older and out living on my own in a flat with a new group of amazing friends who were always down for those late night gaming sessions. Except this time we were all university students, and rules be damned, we could stay up however late we wanted. Of course, this led to many different games being played over many different nights, and since we all had part-time jobs and student loans we're still paying off to this day, it meant a little bit of a disposable income to throw at games. One day, Brawl was brought home and it got played. A lot. Maybe more than anything else that was cycled through our list of games, save for Rock Band, which is almost embarrassing in the amount we played and put money into DLC songs with. Almost. Brawl still holds a special place in my heart for this reason, and I know that it's probably the least liked of the entire franchise by the core fanbase, but it might be my favorite. Memories tied to certain media is a powerful thing, and I don't know if that can be stressed enough with how much this plays a part in my love of certain games and long-running franchises that people generally despise. Mario Party 9 is my favorite release for that exact same reason as Brawl. I did skip the Wii U and 3DS versions out of sheer uninterest in the game for a reason I'll circle back to soon. I did play it at some parties here and there, but I just kind of didn't care at all about that generation of Smash. This brings me up to Ultimate. When I decided to make the leap into Nintendo's latest console, it was only a few months ago. I hadn't really found a system seller for me yet. I played Breath of the Wild on Wii U and Odyssey looked fine, but I didn't really care for just having a Mario game to play. But when I got a big payout from a new job, I figured why not make the financially irresponsible jump to see what it's all about, and I had two options for my bundled in game: Pokemon Let's Go or Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. I chose Let's Go Eevee without hesitation. So what was this newfound disdain for the series? What happened between Brawl and Wii U 3DS that just made me completely uninterested? These were the first proper online versions, so finding friends to play with wasn't the issue. No, and I mean this with all due respect, it was the competitive side of the games. If you've been following my channel for a while, you probably know how much I love fighting games and just competitive games in general. StarCraft 2 took too much of my time in grinding ladders than I care to admit, so it should seem like Smash would have been more appealing than anything else. It fits in that Venn diagram of fighting game and spectator sport that I had grown to love. But that's just it. Melee is only the really widely played game at tournaments, and since I was already predisposed to not like it, I avoided playing it again and not watching the tournaments. As the community and scene evolved, more and more intricate tech around exploiting mechanics was introduced, as well as the ever-dwindling pool of characters that were deemed good enough, making the barrier to entry even harder with every raising of the skill ceiling. Tricky tech and limiting who to play as is not the most friendly welcome. Not only did the game get harder and harder to watch from an outsider's perspective, the community is, how do I put this lightly, less than welcoming. I can see how it got there, but it doesn't excuse the toxicity. An underdog community of an old game that's built on strange tech managing to persevere through hardships of gaining recognition against the current big titles of their years is no easy feat, and would undoubtedly leave anyone with something to prove. And this isn't even to touch on all the controversy surrounding certain players, but we're not getting into that right now. All of this amounted to me having no interest in Smash ever again. I was done. I didn't like the community, so why bother with the online when that's all it would be, and my real life friends either didn't have Nintendo consoles or a lack of interest in games overall. And I certainly wasn't going to go solo into yet another Smash game. But this isn't what the video is about. It's not titled, Why I Hate Smash Bros. No, it's about how I fell in love with the series again. So what happened? How did I feel this way again? Well, since competitive Melee was becoming so prominent, and despite my jabs at the game being a casual party game first and a fighter second, I did forget that the former was still a thing. Maybe it's just the communities and friends I surround myself with. All I saw of Smash was Omega stages, tier lists, no items, and stock battles. It's hard to get into a game like this if that's all that people want to play, and that side of it doesn't interest you in the slightest. If you're a friend of mine deeply entrenched in that community, please don't take this as a diss. It's not that. It's my perception of the community as a whole from the outside. This all changed for me about a month ago. It was my friends from the aforementioned flat where we got addicted to Brawl's birthday. We were all fighting a chronic hangover the morning after, all together again in a similar state we were all those years ago, tired and fighting off our responsibilities as hard as we could. After a quick coffee run and downing a bottle of blue Powerade each, we felt a little more human and a switch was busted out along with Ultimate. I decided to sit the first few rounds out from my sheer stubbornness, but after watching 3-player all items and all stage hazards on, I saw that same spark from the Brawl days starting to ignite again. So I reluctantly picked up controller, went back to my old main Ike, and it was like no time had passed at all. We were all screaming at hype knockoffs, laughing at stupid mistake deaths, and just generally having a good time. This is when it dawned on me the magic of Super Smash Bros. I'd been looking at the game all wrong for way too many years. It's really all about how you want to play and who you choose to play with. Since I had inadvertently surrounded myself with a community playing the game the way they love, but I didn't connect with, it created a distance there that I had no idea was solved by a simple fix. My friend Pixel said this in a stream of theirs I was watching recently, and that's that Smash is a sandbox game that gives you a set of toys and tools to tailor your experience with its systems how you want. And I never really made that connection before, but it resonated with me incredibly hard. The ability to play at a competitive level with stage banning, counterpicking characters, wave dashing, and all of that in a game that can also be played as a silly, goofy hangout game with just Pokeballs turned on playing Saffron City stage with just the Pokemon fighters is truly special, even if I personally don't gel with a big portion of it. When it comes to Smash Bros, I've never cared about being the best or even understanding all the little ways to have a leg up on my friends. I just care about the absolute absurdity and chaos that comes when too much is happening on screen at once that it's almost too hard to tell what's going on and where you are. The randomness of items and stage hazards adds so much controller gripping tension for me that I almost feel addicted to the thrill of the unknown. I'm just sad I lost my way for too long with this idea. If competitive is your jam, that's great, and I'm happy that there is a game we can both play in our own ways. Not long after arriving back home from that hazy hungover day, I thought heavily on whether or not I should grab Ultimate for myself. Was I ready to try going at it alone again? What if everyone is already sick of playing it by now and I'm just wasting money once again? Then something completely out of the blue happened. It was a very cold and early morning here in Wellington, New Zealand, where my best friend and I stayed up way too late watching Nintendo's E3 Direct, and, well, I'm sure you know where this is going. Banjo and Kazooie were announced for Smash, something I have wanted since I was a small child thinking about all the characters I'd like to see duking it up. After a much needed power nap from staying up, I decided to trade in my copy of Let's Go Eevee and put it towards getting Ultimate. It hasn't been the perfect whirlwind romance of a love affair by any means. Unlocking all of the characters was an arduous process that took way too long, even with the cheese strat of playing one stocks and running off the edge to force a new challenger fight. And on top of that, if I lost the fight, it took way too long for that little rematch icon to appear. The online is a mess of lag issues and the lobby system is an absolute nightmare when it comes to changing characters. However, this is more a Nintendo as a whole issue, but it still bothers me nonetheless. All of that said, once I had the entire roster at my disposal days later, I was ready to jump into the online mode. And now me and that group of friends from all those years ago, despite living in different cities and even countries, we can get together to relive the old days of our late teens and early 20s bucking real life, if even for a couple of hours, to reconnect. On top of those old friends, I am incredibly grateful to have an ever-growing online friend group that usually moves on from game to game pretty quickly, but with a solid roster of new DLC characters coming out soon for Ultimate, I can see us coming back to revisit it time and time again for the foreseeable future. I can't promise I'll become a die-hard fan. For now, a weekly pickup with friends is all I need. I also don't think I'll ever make the cross into watching those tournaments that seem to flood my Twitter timeline at least twice a week, but hey, stranger things have happened in the past, and that is how I fell in love with Smash Bros. Again.